So, as I mentioned in the previous video, link in the description, I'm a huge fan of the character design and mechanic variety in Zenless Zone Zero. While each character's element, their additional ability requirement, and playstyle does limit their team options, if you're willing to step away from the meta for a little while, those characters still have a variety of teams that they can work well with, that you may find fun to play. Now, well in this case is pretty subjective, both in regards to personal expectations as well as to personal skill and commitment to the character itself. But to quantify what I mean here at the start, I consider a team viable if 1. I can activate most or all of their abilities and effects, 2. They actually support each other, and 3. They can layer their attacks and actions in a way that makes them more useful in their team slot. More on slots soon. In terms of testing out a team, I consider a team viable if I can clear a notorious hunt boss in under 3 minutes, and or if I can use them to get close to par, 2 minutes and 30 seconds, in a Shiyu defense fight of at least round 6. I also consider a team pretty good if I can clear a notorious hunt in about 2 minutes with no type advantage. So let's jump into this discussion by talking about the basics. So not long after pulling your first character, you'll probably realize that there's some leeway in ZZZ's team building, and it's a basic math problem. Zenless Zone Zero currently has 5 classes, but there's only 3 slots that you can use to make a team. This is because, unlike a traditional RPG team of roles, tank, DPS, healer, the classes in ZZZ really only describe a shared mechanic, not a role. Those being Attack, a character that does high damage with attacks, and typically wants a high crit rate. Anomaly, a character that does high damage with anomaly status effects. Defense, a character that has a shield, they also restore additional assist points with their ultimate. Stun, a character that does more impact damage, stunning an enemy faster. And Support, a character that has abilities that either trigger a buff or a debuff that let the rest of the team do more damage. They also trigger a quick assist with said abilities, which is a safer, faster, stronger way to swap characters that also can benefit combos or trigger additional effects. Out of all of those classes, the only 3 that really mesh into an instant team are Attack, Stun, and Support, which is the first team you're given, Billy, Anby, and Nicole. It's a fair place to start, but it's also quite limiting. It doesn't even include 2 of the classes. So instead, let's put the classes away, and instead of them, I'm going to talk about team building using what I'm calling slots and keywords. The first thing that any team needs is an on-field character. Someone has to fight the enemy. The battle is only over when all of the enemies are defeated. So that's our first slot and our first keyword, on-field. A character that benefits from being on-field, whether that just be from steady, reliable damage, or also from triggering additional effects that require a character to be on-field, such as benefiting from dodges or dodge counters. Our third slot is also pretty easy. If our first slot is the on-field character, a character that's always great to pair them with is a support, which will be our second keyword. Support, a character that increases the damage of other characters on the team, typically with very little field time. Note, here I'm referring to a keyword support, not just the class. All current support class characters have this keyword, so they all run this slot, but just know that the keyword is not limited to the class with that same name. Many other characters have support effects, and so can fill the support role slot. Now honestly, you can just stop there. You don't really need a third character for most of the content in ZZZ. If there is a character you really enjoy playing on field, you can just give them a support and go have fun. There is no need to make things more complicated. And as a kind of bonus effect, when you only run 2 characters, you'll get to use your Bang Boo on every chain attack. Especially when you're just chipping away at Hollow Zero objectives, this can be a fun way to enjoy a specific character, a Bang Boo, or just a little more challenge. But what about that second slot? I'm going to call it the Wildcard slot. And so what the hell goes in that Wildcard slot? A lot of things, hence the name. And since there's no in-game reference for any of this, I'm just going to dump my entire list of keywords here. In total, we have our 3 slots: on-field, Wildcard, and Support. We already have 2 keywords related to those slots, on-field and Support. And adding to that, we get Burst, Off-field, Stun, Pseudo-stun, Bodyguard, and Anomaly. One of the important things to know out of the gate with this keyword-based team building is that most characters have multiple keywords. That really is the essence of the Wildcard slot. It is a flexible fill-in-the-blank but you also want a character in that slot to have multiple useful keywords. What you run in the wildcard slot is largely based on your preferences, and the characters you want to play. There's really only one wrong answer for the wildcard slot, and that would be a second on-field character. You generally don't benefit from running two on-field characters on the same team. Now, as to the definitions of those new keywords, Burst, a character who deals their damage, anomaly, or impact within a short window, and with a limited resource. Typically, they build up said resource while off-field, meaning they don't take too much time away from an on-field character. Bodyguard refers to a character with a discounted defensive assist, using only one assist point. This is basically the difference between only being able to parry a few attacks, or every attack between stun windows. Defensive assists are a great source of impact, as well as some additional damage, in addition to interrupting enemy attacks. So having a character dedicated to triggering those assists can be useful. Off-field. A character that deals damage, anomaly, or impact while off-field. They might need a little field time to refresh a resource, so they're similar to Burst. However, their related effects tend to be spread across a longer duration and probably require an additional trigger. Stun. A character with a high impact stat and skill multipliers, triggering stun faster than other characters. Yes, this refers specifically to characters within that class, though I'm also using it here as a keyword, since what I'll eventually show will be on-field stun characters, burst stun characters, and just recently, off-field stun characters. Pseudo-stun. Non-stun characters who have large impact multipliers and/or character mechanics that allow them to also deal a decent amount of impact damage. Slower to stun than dedicated stun characters, but faster than other non-stun characters. Anomaly. Similar to stun, this also just refers to the related class characters, but is used as a keyword here for the same reasons. Of course, since this is all based on experience, you are not going to see these keywords anywhere directly in-game, though you can infer some of it from reading skill descriptions. But the best way to figure this out, outside of me just telling you here in this video, is to just try the characters out. Now, I'm about to go faction by faction, character by character, identifying their slot, their keywords, and also talking about my experience with them, and maybe a few tips, warnings, or even some trivia. Because that's going to take a fair amount of time, I'm going to just populate this table with all of the characters here at the top, rather than make you wait until the end to see it all together. There will also be timestamps for each character in the description for you to jump to if you want to skip the rant. Anyway, here's that list. You'll notice I've added a fourth slot, Versatile. Why have I done that? Well, there's a number of characters that are flexible enough to be played as either an on-field character or a burst character. Basically, these characters do damage that is so consistent, or their burst window is so frequent, that you can comfortably play them either on-field or wildcard without really sacrificing any damage or perks. The only other major exception to this slotting, one I don't reflect here, is how a pair of anomaly characters with different elements basically negate the need for an on-field character at all. In that situation, each anomaly character is functionally both an on-field and a burst character at the same time. Another quick note. What I'm about to say about the characters, specifically the A-rank characters, will include talk about their mindscapes and signature weapons. I won't be doing that for any of the S-rank characters except for the very first one, just for your information. The Cunning Hares. Nicole Damara. Support. Keywords: support. Nicole, boss of Gentle House, more commonly known as the Cunning Hares, is a rock-solid support. At a basic level, she's really easy to use. Just fire off her EX special and quick assist to whoever is next. Using her signature weapon, she ends up with enough energy regen that she can EX special very frequently, which means that the uptime of her admittedly short debuff is still pretty good. If you lean into her mechanics, you can further improve that debuff time by swapping her in and just using a basic attack. Unless you're running her on-field for some reason, she will always have charges of her enhanced bullets. Still, since the debuff duration is only like 3.5 seconds, you should probably only bother doing this if you're about to trigger a big hit outside of her regular EX specials. Nicole also has 3 different versions of her EX special available. As a more casual player, I never really use her lobbed shot, but I often squeeze a little extra damage and debuff time out of her charged EX special by starting the charge and then switching to her sitting charge. I don't always do this, and honestly, I mostly just use that longer charge as a way to relax and reset my brain when I'm making too many mistakes. Advice. While Nicole is invulnerable while charging her EX special, it's worth noting that there's like a half-second delay between pressing special attack and when Nicole actually starts charging. You'll likely encounter this if you ever try and sneak it in under an enemy's attack. You'll often just get hit in the face instead. Just something to be aware of. Anby Damara. On-field. Keywords, on-field stun. Lots of people like to use Anby as a burst stunner, and she's okay in that role. Her core skill does make that work, though she's still a little slow at it since you need to wind up her basic attack first. I've been enjoying her a lot more lately by leaning into her on-field mechanics. For one, she's got her additional ability, which gives her energy during dodge counters. Also, if you look at her signature weapon and her M1, she gains additional energy generation rate too. Quick aside, in case you don't know, characters have two energy stats. The first, energy regen, is the passive energy generation over time all characters have. You'll typically increase this from signature weapons like Nicole's, or you can roll it on disc 6. The second stat, energy generation rate, is rarer, and scales both the passive energy regen as well as the energy on-screen characters gain from basic and dash attacks. I no clue if it also scales other energy gains, like Anby's additional ability or M4. Anyway, so to get the full value out of Anby's energy generation rate, boosting energy from her attacks, she has to be on field. And maxing that rate also lets her funnel bonus energy to the rest of the team with her M4. Advice. Dodge! Anby has a great dodge counter. It's short, but not so short that you'll accidentally get hit using it. It's also fast enough to comfortably chain it multiple times through certain enemies' sustained attacks. And dodging is relevant because the real key here is that tunnel vision is your enemy. Anby's combo mechanic encourages you to always push through to her third attack so you can then get her impact bonus. But if you focus too much on finishing the combo, you're gonna get hit instead. Anby does not do bonus impact when she gets hit in the face. If you just abort the combo and hit the dodge counter, you'll be back to that third hit in no time. And then you'll be doing more damage and more stun as well. Billy Kid. On-field. Keywords, on-field DPS. I don't play a lot of Billy. This has less to do with him than it does with me. Billy's fighting style is a lot of stick and move. As someone with ADD, standing still for even a second makes my skin crawl, so I don't really love that fighting style. That said, Billy is definitely viable if you want to main him. He has a lot of good damage multipliers, especially for an A-rank character. You'll need good discs to prop up his crit rate, but when played well, he's actually quite strong. The key to Billy's damage is immediately getting into his crouching shot state, and then staying there as long as possible. Every time you get hit, you'll get knocked out of that state, and that means you're losing damage from both the state loss and the time it takes getting back into that state. Also worth noting, once you are in crouching shot state, Billy won't track enemies. This means that if the enemy moves, he'll just be shooting empty space until you move too. Moving during crouching state triggers a rolling shot, after which Billy will retarget. But for more mobility and damage, you can dash attack into a rolling shot, which also won't break crouching state. Finally, don't forget that Billy has damage fall off for almost all of his range attacks. Billy needs to dance close to the fire to do max damage, though that's worth doing anyway to get the max value out of his M2 and M4. Advice. If there's one thing I'm really unsure about with Billy, it's if he has any teams besides Hyper Carry. Running 2 supports so you can max the damage of a single character. The easiest way to lose all of his damage buffs is to swap him out. Billy really likes to be on field. That said, I think Billy is actually a lot of fun to play solo. That's actually where I first tried him out and found out that I enjoyed elements of his playstyle. I ran a level 40 Billy alone through the 3 early stages of Hollow Zero Withering Garden, and I had a really great time doing that. Nekomata, or Nekomata. On-field. Keywords, on-field DPS. I think that Nekomata has the most problematic design of any S-rank character in ZZZ. And the reason I say that is because Nekomata is missing her core mechanic when you first pull her. Neko's gimmick is attacking the enemy from behind for bonus damage. But M0R0 Neko, no mindscapes, no signature weapon, does not get any bonuses from backstabbing an enemy. She's got the move for it. Hold down the attack button and Nekomata will dash through an enemy so that you can attack them from behind. But she doesn't get any benefit from doing that until you get a second copy of her or you pull her weapon. I suspect that M1 ARM1 Nekomata is actually a decent character, but I won't fault you if you ignore her until then. I have her weapon, and recently I've been working on her, and I can say that I enjoy her playstyle. Interrupting your combo to charge your attack so that you can pounce behind the enemy, and then let loose either her EX special or her ultimate, feels good. It's both challenging and rewarding to work out the best timing for each enemy. As far as being an on-field character, she is both a strong dodge counter, which both has decent AoE and buffs her due to her core passive, and Nekomata also has a cheap EX special, which you'll build it up frequently if you keep her on field. Advice. Nekomata's charged basic attack to dash behind an enemy does not have invulnerability. Trying to do this through an enemy's attack is probably not going to work. 2. Nekomata's quick assist animation is a little long and ends a good distance away from the enemy. If you rush and try to EX special immediately after quick assisting, Nekomata will probably whiff completely. If you instead basic attack immediately after the quick assist, she'll close the distance and then you can special attack without missing. You could also charge attack to get behind the enemy, but see advice number 1. Time for some Cunning Hares trivia. Trivia number 1. Nicole isn't actually a mess. I think this is pretty well known, but I've seen enough girl failure, bad with money jokes that I think it's worth highlighting. Nicole actually seems to be pretty great at managing money and her business. There's a number of hints in her backstory and events that suggest that the reason Gentle House is always so poor is because Nicole is donating all of their profits to orphans. The Cunning Hares are always broke because they're never saving any money for a rainy day and they spend very little on themselves to maximize that donation. No doubt this is why Anby, Billy, and now Nekomata are so loyal to Nicole, despite being overworked and underpaid. They believe in and support what she's doing, and also, they can all pretty much take care of themselves anyway. Speaking of taking care of themselves, here's an observation from these keywords I've introduced. The Cunning Hares are kinda hardcore. Outside of Nicole, all 3 of them are on-field damage characters. Yes, Anby is stun, but she's very on-field, and she still leans DPS in her Mindscape's and signature weapon. Nicole rolls with a bunch of thugs. There aren't any wildcards in the Cunning Hares. Without Nicole, teamwork is not one of their strengths. Finally, some dialogue advice. The story and events very frequently let you make sarcastic remarks either directly to or about Nicole vis-a-vis finances and debts. Resist the urge to do this around Anby. While the negative effects of lost reputation are trivial in the long run, and very few trust event dialogue options ever result in lost reputation, any snide remark you make about Nicole to Anby will result in a loss of trust. Bellabog Heavy Industries. Grace Howard. Wildcard. Keywords: Burst Anomaly. Grace's kit is pretty simple. Her basic attacks build up zap charges, and at max charges she gets a large anomaly build-up boost to her next special attack. Her basic attack combo of 4 attacks actually generates 16 charges, 8 over her first 3 attacks, and an additional 8 from her 4th and final attack. That said, I don't actually know if it's worth mixing in her regular special attack as part of that combo to consume zap charges. It does build up shock charge a teeny bit faster, but it also results in less damage, and you don't generate any energy from special attacks. So it might be better to just spam her basic attacks until you have enough energy for an EX special. Unless you're just a little shy of proccing shock and need to push it over. In that case, maybe throw out a special attack. Doing that, sticking to her basic attacks, also makes her easier to play, since you'll have less tunnel vision if you're not trying to spend zap charges every 8 charges. Advice. The best advice I can give for Grace, and something I'm still very much working on, is similar to Andy's. Beware of tunnel vision. Her basic attacks have a lot of mobility and AoE, but I feel like they also have a longer window where you can't dodge, so I get hit a lot more than I probably should. I also miss a lot of assists while playing Grace, which is because of tunnel vision. And since I'm currently running her with Anton, I would really benefit from hitting more of his defensive assists. And speaking of, Anton Ivanov, Wildcard. Keywords: Burst DPS and Bodyguard. Anton is our first Burst DPS, and boy is he. Unlike every other current character, Anton's EX special acts more like a toggle than a powerful attack. He starts out relatively slow, only dealing physical damage, but once you can activate his EX special, he enters Burst Mode. In Burst Mode, Anton's regular attacks all become electric and get really good damage modifiers, some of the best in the game for basic attacks. But they also drain his energy. Once Anton runs out of energy, he'll drop out of Burst Mode, and he'll be weak again until you can build it back up. There's not a lot of finesse to Anton's attacks. He just dashes directly at the enemy and drill baby drill. The challenge of Anton is trying to nurse that energy bar for every bit of damage you can without ever running out. I'm still working on it. He's also a little tough to build. Anton wants a high crit rate to maximize his additional ability, which you need 8 crits per second to get the max value out of. But if you run his signature weapon, you get energy regen. Not that that hurts with his insatiable energy thirst. I ran him for a while with even more energy regen on Disc 6, but ultimately decided it wasn't worth the loss of attack for dedicated burst DPS. Advice. 1. As I just mentioned, I've been working on Anton for a while, running him on a team with Grace, specifically Rina, Anton, and Grace. I'm not good enough with them yet for SHU Defense 7 or to 9-star Deadly Assault, but I do still enjoy running the team. I call it Shock Zerker, and I think that's a pretty apt description. You basically just constantly switch between proccing Shock with Grace and then drilling as much as you can with Anton before he risks running out of energy, with Rina tossing out an attack in between the swaps to maintain her buff. Your burst window is any time Grace procs Shock, so it's pretty much all of the time. Stuns are just a bonus. The hardest part is keeping Anton from running dry, because that brings the whole operation to a halt. So not a meta team, but a challenging and fun team all the same. I think a huge help would be if I'd hit more defensive assists with Anton, since Anton's defensive assist follow-up doesn't use any energy, not to mention the bonus impact. However, outside of tunnel vision with Grace, I'm also fighting muscle memory, since I usually run a bodyguard to the right in team order. However, I run Anton to the left, since I want the extra energy from Rina's ultimate to pass to him. 2. I suspect that Anton might perform well, and quite a bit easier, with an on-field stun character, like Qingyi. Not only because of the bonus damage, but also because the extra time needed to proc stun lets him refill energy. I tried it once using Anby and Seth, while also having the two of them run Anomaly Proficiency to lean into Anton's additional ability, but I wasn't happy with the results. I ended up replacing Anton with Harumasa and switching Anby to a DPS build. The real kicker is that currently, Grace is the only character that lets Anton get max value out of his additional ability. Koleda Belobog, Wildcard. Keywords, Burst Stun, Bodyguard, and Support. Getting good value out of Koleda is incredibly simple. Run her in the Wildcard slot, swap her in when she has energy for her EX special, use said special, swap her back out. I'm not going to prove this, but I'm pretty sure she has the highest single-hit impact generation of any stun character to date. It's all packed into that single boom, and the wind-up is minimal. You can trigger the boom as part of her basic attack combo, but it's not any stronger than just going straight into her EX special. Outside of that boom, she's fine. She's got a slow attack combo, though it does have a lot of invulnerability at the end, but that's not such a good thing if the enemy just moves away. She does have a heavy assist, so she shines in the wildcard slot playing bodyguard. The best bodyguards are stun bodyguards. When she is on field, such as if you decide to trigger her enhanced basic attacks before swapping her out, note that Koleda has a strong dodge counter, so make sure to hit those when you have the chance. Advice. I really don't have much advice for Koleda, she really is that simple. I guess I'll talk about her teamwork animations with Ben. Mechanically, all they do is add 10% more damage to a couple of Koleda's attacks. They're neat, but definitely feel more like they were an experiment and nothing more. Not only does damage not matter that much to Koleda, since she's filling a burst stun roll, but Ben's not really a fan of the stun window either. I guess you could run them with a burst DPS for the stun window, but I don't think Ben and Koleda's support effects really equal the value of a dedicated support, which one of them would be replacing. Ben Bigger. On field. Keywords, on field DPS, bodyguard, support, and pseudo stun. Let's do something every ZZZ YouTuber wants to do. Let's complain about the Pridwin tier list. In my opinion, this placement is probably the most incorrect thing on that tier list, and I will die on that hill. Ben's primary role is not support. I mean, the 16% crit isn't awful, but it's not going to be the defining feature of any team. And let's not forget that it's attached to the weakest shield of any defense character. Even with high defense, Ben's shield only has like 1200 hit points. The devs make Ben's strength clear. They show it on his signature weapon, and they show it on his M2 and his M4. Ben is a counter-attack DPS, and he's only going to counter while on field. So Ben is an on-field DPS, one of the most unique in the game. Ben is also the only current character that benefits from building defense. Ben's core passive will turn most of his defense into base attack, which then scales further with any attack percent sub-modifiers you have. The end result is that a high defense Ben can have one of the highest attack stats of all of your characters. Defense isn't exactly a critical stat, since you don't want to get hit in the first place, but it does help soak up the damage from any counters you miss, as you learn to get better at his timing. Advice. Number 1. Maybe you played Ben once in the tutorial room and they taught you that you can hold a special attack down to block, then waiting for the proper moment, release it to counterattack. Yeah, my advice is to completely forget that. Waiting isn't in my vocabulary. This is the only line you need to know from Ben's special attack description. Ben is invulnerable when activating block. You can special cancel into Ben's special attack. Forget blocking, just keep attacking until the enemy takes a swing at you. Ben's slow attacks are fine, since they're only for killing time and building energy. Once the enemy does attack you, time your special to hit at the same time as the incoming attack animation. If you nail the timing, Ben will glow gold, and you'll trigger counter damage, while taking no damage in return. Doing this, Ben can counter any attack. Punches, eruptions, bullets, rockets, missiles, magic missiles, shockwaves. If it can hurt you, Ben can counter it. Now, it's not free, it's actually a little challenging. An example. If this bar is the window for triggering an assist, and this is the window for triggering a perfect dodge, then this bit here is the window for nailing Ben's counter. Speaking from experience, even that narrow window is still pretty achievable. The real key is that the more aggressive the enemy is, the stronger Ben gets. Thracian and Shadow Jane are both very fun to fight with Ben, since their aggressive combo-based attacks just mean more opportunities to punish them. If you have not tried to play counter DPS Ben yet, I encourage you to give it a try, maybe with one of those two enemies. 2. Ben's basic attack 3 is a strong but slow attack, and it's a locked animation, so you can't cancel it into a counter. You can dash attack to reset his attack combo, avoiding this third animation. Still, it's also a powerful attack that you want to use if you think the enemy isn't going to attack you during it. In addition, since you're invulnerable during it, it's also worth setting up just before swapping in another character. 3. As far as for teams, Ben's got a rock-solid support in Lucy. Ben literally cannot run, so on top of her attack buffs, quick assisting off of Lucy's EX special is a great way to move Ben around the battlefield. That just leaves your wildcard slot. Since Ben is a pseudo-stunner, his counters have good impact multipliers, you will reliably trigger stun. But Ben can't counter any attacks during the stun window, so he kinda sucks during it. You're going to want some kind of burst DPS in that wildcard slot. I use Burnice, but we haven't gotten to her yet, so just know you want someone who can take advantage of the stun window to complete Ben's team. Victoria Housekeeping Company. Corin Wicks. Wildcard. Keywords, burst DPS, and bodyguard. I really don't like to on-field Corin. She has incredibly short range and a really slow attack combo. I find her basic attack combo exhausting. Remember, chainsaws don't cut, they tear. A slow, agonizing process. Of course, the first time I cleared 9 difficulty Nineveh, I did it with Corin as my last character standing, so she can definitely still do work in a pinch. But how I actually use her is as a bodyguard and a burst DPS. I've been using her since launch, and I love her in the wildcard slot. Her EX special is pretty brain dead to use. Just hold the button down and let the little murder maid do her thing. It does solid damage, though it never makes headlines, since she triggers a hose of smaller numbers instead of a big one worthy of a thumbnail. In the wildcard slot, she'll pretty much always have energy in the stun window, especially once you level her signature weapon. In fact, depending on how long it takes you to get to stun, you might want to briefly use an EX special outside of the stun window, just to keep her energy from capping and being wasted. Advice: use your bodyguard. Make use of Corin's defensive assist. It's got huge multipliers, though I don't know how that actually shakes out due to the duration of the attack. Enemies will sometimes slip around it, but it still reliably builds both impact and damage. I run Corin with Piper on field, and there's nothing I love more than tag teaming assists between them when the larger bosses have combos. Von Lycaon, on field. Keywords: on field, stun, and support. I can't say too much about Lycaon since I haven't pulled him. I've only used the trial versions of him. He seems fine. He's got a nice on-field kit, and there's room for a lot of skill expression in how you can either rush or charge each step of his combo strings. Also, his support effects are really strong for ice teams. Advice: I suspect he's a huge boon paired with Ellen, but I'll talk about that after Ellen's introduction. Ellen Joe. Versatile. Keywords: on-field/burst DPS. I'm not actually a big fan of Ellen. During the story, I immediately fell in love with Zhu Yuan's gameplay, so the only reason I have Ellen at all is dumb luck. I pulled her during my very first 10 pull at launch. That said, she is my only ice DPS other than Miyabi, so I have been building and using her for type advantage pretty regularly. And Ellen's got a really cool kit, no pun intended, specifically with her circling roaming state and her charge scissor bite attack. It's really easy to do great damage with Ellen, in a vacuum. So my problems with Ellen mostly come from just playing her poorly. I think that Ellen is one of the more technically challenging characters, not with regard to maximizing her DPS. That's pretty simple. But instead, it's just really easy to get hit by rushing her mechanics. Recklessly using her charged scissor strike, you get hit. Hold down the attack button after a dodge counter to quick charge, you drop invulnerability, and you get hit. Rush her basic attack 3, which dashes through an enemy, thinking you'll avoid a hit, get hit instead. Combo her basic attack 3 after an EX special during an enemy attack, you're invulnerable for the special attack, but you'll get hit in the basic attack follow-up. Advice: 1. If you struggle to do well while playing Ellen, like I do, the best advice is probably just to slow down and focus on getting hit less. After that, maybe switch your slots or style around and use Ellen more as a burst DPS. All of the above problems go away in the stun window. Burst Ellen can just comfortably dance from EX special to basic attack 3 and back as long as you have energy. Top that off with her ultimate and Ellen does fantastic damage. 2. I kind of wonder what a Venn diagram would look like between players that like Ellen, players that don't like Ellen, and players that have Lycaon. I personally suspect that it would look a lot like 2 circles. If you can run Lycaon and then use him as your on-field character, he is a perfect support for Ellen, letting her just wreck in the stun window. So that's my best, casual-friendly advice for Ellen. Hope the gacha eventually gives you Lycaon. Alexandrina Sebastian, or Rina. Support. Keywords: support. Rina's a lot like Nicole, but if you traded AoE grouping for just raw damage. It's not a great exchange, since boosting the damage of a dedicated support isn't a huge deal, but it's not nothing. The only real difference is that Nicole debuffs defense, while Rina shares her pen percent stat. You'll need to look elsewhere if you want to know if there's any major difference between those two effects. I don't bother with spreadsheets and the scientific method when I play video games. Outside of my team with Grace and Anton, I often pair her with Harumasa, just to stack element advantage during Deadly Assault, and she works great there. That said, also like Nicole, her support effect isn't boosted by her additional ability, so she technically works on any team. Advice: 1. Rina's EX special and her ultimate both always start right next to her, so to maximize the damage they deal, make sure to dash next to an enemy before using them. 2. Rina retreats from her target during her evasive assist follow-up, and that can leave you out of position depending on who you swap to next. And her attack is locked for a few seconds, so you definitely want to swap. That's not much of a problem, since Rina is also one of the fastest characters in the game, specifically when she dodges. So just remember to close the distance before you swap, if that's a factor. Victoria Housekeeping Trivia. Trivia number 1. 2 influences. So it's pretty well known that the members of Victoria Housekeeping all have design influences from something horror or monster related. But to add to that, I'm going to make the argument that they each actually have 2 influences. Let me present my case. First up is Corin. Corin is clearly associated with Frankenstein's monster. Not only does she have the screws, but her M6 background reveals a huge scar on her arm, and her agent information indicates she was quite ill in the past and saved by some major surgery. To put it another way, she was damaged and put back together. There's also indications in the related Ballet Twins TV mode missions that she's crazy strong now, so that's 1. For her second, that's pretty easy, right? Girl's got a chainsaw. Do I need to say anything more than that? On to Ellen. Ellen is a shark, and we've all generally been fine with just that. Jaws if you want, but there's plenty of shark monster movies to go around. For Ellen's second influence, I direct you to her massive garden shears, commonly referred to in-game as scissors. Now, some will stay with shark there, since the shears effectively bite, and they are styled to look a little sharky. But doubling down on calling them scissors, I can't help but remember the classic, and recently remade by WayForward, game Clock Tower, and being menaced by the Scissor Man. The internet tells me that Scissor Man is also a recurring villain across that series, and that's what I'm sticking with. I think there's a fair chance that Ellen's shears are a reference to the classic video game horror series Clock Tower. And isn't that cute? Both of our young maids, the muscle of Victoria Housekeeping, are linked to serial killers. Next up is Rina, her first being super easy. Her bang boos are clearly ghosts, and even Rina floats. Now, there's several elements that I think point to Rina's second influence, and I'm going to start out with her, quote, cooking. I really hate this anime trope. It's a fine enough one-time gag, but for a character to be that bad at cooking, consistently, they have to also be incredibly stupid, and that's no fun. But what if it's not stupidity driving this trope's use, but something else? I think you could describe most of Rina's, quote, cooking, just tossing massive chunks of weird ingredients into a pot, as cauldron-style cooking. I just gave the game away, but let's still check all the boxes. Another thing to note is that Rina is currently our oldest agent. I'm ignoring how old any intelligent constructs may be, and let's be clear, I don't actually consider her that old, I have a horse in that race, but still oldest. Next, take note of Rina's hand gestures. There's elements of puppetry there, with how she controls her bangbu, but I think you could also describe the same pose as being withered, gnarled, or dare I say, witchy. And for our final clues, let us note Rina's hair and her name. Silver hair, in anime, is often used for Russian characters, and Rina's full name is Alexandrina Sebastian. Put it all together, and we have an old, relatively anyway, Slavic witch. Rina's second influence is a witch, and possibly even the Baba Yaga. And if that's true, I don't mind the cooking trope so much anymore. Finally, we have Lycaon. Again, easy to start. Wolfman, werewolf, done. The second, I think we all also know. Vampire. But how to get there? Is there any direct historical link between werewolves and vampires in fiction, or is that a recent pop culture addition? I don't know, so I'm not going to use that. Instead, I'm going to use an argument that's possibly weaker, but that I still stand by. Let us review Lycaon's idol pose. That proud, stylish, almost arrogant pose, pelvis first, I believe that Lycaon is a JoJo reference. And if you somehow don't know, JoJo refers to Jonathan Joestar, a young man from a wealthy family. And who does Jonathan end up as rivals with? Another young man, a blonde, with a toxic father, who he poisons, and ultimately, after growing up together, becomes Jonathan's arch-enemy and a vampire. That's 2 references for all 4 characters. I rest my case. Trivia 2, Canonical Age. As far as I know, Rina is the only character in Zenless Zone Zero that we know a canonical age for. Now I am still taking a bit of a leap here, but the evidence I have appears during her side story. 1. Rina is clearly invested in Granny's story, even though we ultimately find out that Granny is the wrong person for Rina's test. 2. At the start of the last part, in TV mode, Rina introduces Granny Laisha's backstory. That story takes place 41 years ago, and Rina says that Granny was then about the same age as Rina is now. 3. In the hospital flashback, we see 6 babies, but only 3 are described. 4. We then find out that Granny competed in a beauty contest that year, where it's said that it's surprising how far she got, and that she emerged as the dark horse candidate, making it into the finals. 5. Rina knows a lot about Granny Leisha and her story, including something as specific as her nurse ID number. She also knows about the life outcomes of the 3 other babies previously mentioned. 6. During the final cutscene, Rina says,
"You didn't lose them, Granny. They just grew up. Now, it's finally their turn to protect you."
Putting all that together, what we end up with is that Rina was one of the other 6 babies. She was saved by Granny Leisha, which is why Rina knows so much about her and is invested in Granny's well-being. And if that's true, then Rina is currently 41 years old, and Granny Leisha is 82. Granny was a dark horse candidate in the beauty contest because at the time she was competing, she was also 41. So while I am making an assumption that Rina was one of the other 6 babies shown in the flashback, I think the real leap of logic would be assuming that Rina only knows what she does about Granny Leisha just because she's meticulous at her job. That's a lot of specifics to know without a vested interest. Criminal Investigation Special Response Team. Zhu Yuan. Versatile. Keywords: on-field/burst DPS. Zhu Yuan is probably the most mobile character to date, and I'm not talking about speed. I mean that Zhu Yuan changes position with pretty much every individual attack she makes. Press the joystick to the side, and Zhu Yuan doesn't just roll in that direction. She rolls in like a 160-degree arc, and you end up on the complete other side of the target. Her basic attack combo both sucks her in, while also pushing her away, and her charged shell shot attacks suck her back in too. Her ultimate pushes her away, and you want to stay close for max damage, so then you have to dash attack to close back in. Running Zhu Yuan on field is frantic, and I love it. She mostly functions as a burst DPS, since her high damage is linked to using her piercing shot shell attacks, but you can gain those shells in so many different ways that you don't really need to save that many for the burst window. 2 shot shells are gained by the final 2 attacks of her basic attack combo. You gain a shell anytime you dodge counter. You gain a shell anytime you quick assist in. You gain 3 shells from an invasive assist. You gain 3 shells from an EX special attack. You gain 3 shells from a chain attack.
Don't even try it. You're surrounded! Yeah!
Seeing as she can only hold 9 shells, and she starts with 6, you really do not need to nurse her shell count that much. Zhu Yuan can also perfect dodge, similar to Billy, with whatever her rolling shot equivalent is called. Though I probably dodge with this more often as pure luck rather than skill. Advice. 1. Lining up Zhu Yuan shot shell attacks to benefit from their piercing requires more patience and skill than I currently have. As I mentioned, if you try and move while attacking, Zhu Yuan is going to move where she wants to, not necessarily where you want to. So the trick to keeping her position in check is to just stop attacking for 1 second. Run to where you want to be, and then start firing off your shot shells. But I'm usually too impatient to do that. 2. Zhu Yuan's shot shells have a 3 attack combo, where she fires 1 shell, then a second, and finally a burst of 3, for a total of 5 shells. Especially when running her on field, you might want to cancel after 2 shots to better maintain your shell count. On field, you can regularly gain a couple shells, but you'll run dry if you're always firing off 5 each time. On that same note, her 3-shot burst is a longer attack, so you can use that as a setup to tag someone else in without losing much field time. Qingyi. On field. Keywords: on field stun. I don't have Qingyi, so I can't say too much about her. She requires a fair amount of field time to hit max stats of her stun buff, but from using her in her trial modes, I think she's also still pretty easy to use. Of special note would be the taser attack in her basic attack combo that you can repeat forever. It has a large AoE, pulls enemies together, and also fills up the gauge she needs for a charged basic attack. Advice. Don't forget to dodge. Qingyi is not invulnerable during her taser spam, or when she's using her charged basic attack. She's got interrupt assist, so her attacks won't be cancelled, but at high Shiyu defense levels, or especially the battle tower, you'll be taking a lot of damage if you're just eating hits. Seth Lowell, Wildcard. Keywords, Bodyguard, Support, and Pseudo-Stun. Seth is like the poster child for this whole idea of a wildcard slot. At first glance, he just seems suited to supporting anomaly characters, which he certainly does do. Seth's core mechanic is that he has a resolve gauge, and when at least 75% full, he can use a charged basic attack to trigger a reverse quick assist, and the character that swaps in gets a shield and an anomaly proficiency buff. Seth can also trigger a reverse quick assist as part of his defensive assist, allowing you to parry a hit with him and then immediately switch back to your on-field character, who gains the shield and buff. So Seth makes a great bodyguard character. As far as his attacks go, they're honestly pretty slow. Both his charged basic attack and his EX special have really long animations, and you may not like to use them. But there is a very brief window after Seth procs a quick assist with his defensive assist where you can still trigger an attack. This includes both of those strong slow attacks. That means that you can trigger Seth's defensive assist and then chain into his charged basic attack, or if you don't have enough gauge, trigger his EX special instead, and still hit the quick assist. The window is a little small, a little less than a second maybe, but if you successfully hit the timing, you'll be freely attacking with your on-field character, while Seth tag teams with his slow combo at the same time, which completely negates the time loss from Seth's slow attacks. And Seth's impact multipliers on both of those attacks are quite high, meaning that the whole chain of attacks builds up quite a lot of impact, hence his pseudo-stun designation. As to Seth maybe also being good damage, I'm still waiting to see that. At M6, Seth's charged basic attack gets a damage bonus, a crit damage bonus, and it's guaranteed to crit. I suspect that might be a huge thing for him, and I'm considering leaning into it, just going all in on crit damage, crit rate be damned, in his disc build. Unfortunately, I only have him at M5, so I don't know yet. Finally, I have to mention that I really hate how slow his ultimate is, and typically avoid using it. Seth is a defense unit, so you can use his ultimate to get back assist points, but seeing as Seth is also a bodyguard, which means I let him take most of the parries, I don't generally find that useful. Advice. 1. Seth's charged basic attack does not have invulnerability. That means that he can take a fair amount of damage when using that attack if it doesn't flinch the enemy. Just something to consider when doing the quick assist combo I just mentioned. Now, Seth will often have his shield up, which he gains from his EX special, so outside of the battle tower, it's probably not that big a deal, but still something worth knowing. 2. I don't really like waiting, but charging Seth's EX special does significantly improve both the damage and the impact. Despite my impatience, I still often charge it, since with good timing, or just a little luck, the enemy will trigger an assist while you're charging, and then you can stack set assist on top of Seth's EX special. Either way, definitely always swap out of his EX special. It's slow, and Seth is invulnerable during it, so there's no reason to hang around. Seth's fully charged EX special also has a really good, if not guaranteed, flinch chance, but I'll leave that to EOXS to gush about. 3. You can get Seth's buff on both of his allies, not just his reversed quick assist buddy. To do this, you need the enemy stunned. Before triggering a chain attack, if you use Seth's charged basic attack to start that chain attack, whichever character you swap to first will get his shield and anomaly buff, so the second character would typically be your support slot. If you've already started a chain attack, you can still do this by just canceling the chain attack early and restarting it as I just said. You'll lose one of your chain attacks doing this, but Seth's chain attack is slow anyway, so I feel you really only lose out on the bang boo. That might matter more at M6, since the chain attack does refill his resolve, but again, I don't know how hard he can actually hit. Jane Doe. On-field. Keywords, on-field anomaly. I've been running Piper as my main physical DPS and anomaly character since launch, so I haven't actually used Jane much, despite pulling her. Still, she's pretty great. Her core gimmick is that her attacks cause a debuff, which allows assault procs to crit, and this can result in some pretty big damage numbers. Jane also has a separate gauge that she builds up by attacking and dodging. When full, she enters Passion State, gaining additional anomaly buildup and an attack bonus. She also gains one use of her Soukaku jump channeled attack. Speaking of dodges, Jane has an additional dodge, so 3 before a cooldown penalty, and unlike most other characters, she can dodge while in midair. This means that Jane can pretty easily dodge attacks, which just fills her passion bar faster. Similar to Billy, I think my biggest issue with Jane is just that she doesn't benefit much from being off-field. Assault, the physical anomaly, just does a single burst of damage, so you don't need Disorder to maximize it like you do with the damage over time anomalies. You can proc Assault back to back, and you just do more damage. Well, at least every 3 seconds, which is the global cooldown on proccing the same element. The primary reason to run her Disorder, at all, is really just to get the build-up from her additional ability. Advice. Timing her charged basic attack, her Soukaku jump, requires some awareness and or enemy knowledge. Jane gets just 1 each time she enters her passion state. It's pretty short-ranged, and unlike Piper's spin, she doesn't move during it. So if you cancel it to dodge, or the enemy just walks away from it, it ends up wasted. Figuring out when to trigger it is something you need to learn. Sons of Calydon. Luciana de Montefiore, Lucy. Support. Keywords, support and off-field DPS. Lucy is easily one of the simplest support characters to run, since after a few Mindscapes it becomes trivial to refresh and maintain her buff. She does have one of the weakest buffs across supports, but she makes up for that with a fair amount of damage output. I definitely recommend building Lucy like any other attack character. High attack and good crit values. Her ultimate can actually put out some decent screenshot-worthy numbers, and high attack and good crit also affect the damage of her boars and her M6. And let's give a shout out to that M6. Well, it's just a nice addition on most teams. There are characters with channeled EX special attacks where it really shines. Piper, Corin, and Burnice all significantly boost Lucy's damage, triggering a steady rain of pigs. Advice. 1. It's silly, but hands down, my favorite part of Lucy's kit is quick assisting off of her EX special. Lucy's special bats one of her boars across the battlefield, either as a line drive, which doesn't always hit, or a slower but seeking flyball. I never get tired of using that range to teleport my on-field slot character across the battlefield. It's just always fun. 2. A very minor addition, but similar to what I said with Seth, you can trigger an attack with Lucy right before you quick assist. This is just an easy way to squeeze in a bit more damage, and usually pretty safe, since she'll either be invulnerable from her EX special, or at least a fair distance away from the enemy if not. Especially with her ultimate, I recommend always sneaking in a flyball special just before you quick assist, since the slower attack is irrelevant when you swap characters. It's just more, relatively free damage. Piper Wheel. Versatile. Keywords: Anomaly DPS, Bodyguard, Pseudo-Stun, and Support. I love playing Piper. I pulled her during Chapter 2 at launch, and she immediately became my first main character. She has a slow basic attack combo, but you can add a lot of speed to that combo by just always starting with the dash attack. On top of her combo, Piper is one of the few characters that has a special attack that's worth using without energy. It has solid multipliers, especially once it hits its 3rd charge level. And you can get into that 3rd charge level fast, since by triggering her special attack after her 3rd basic attack, or after a quick assist, you'll start at level 2. And getting max charge is important, because once you're at level 3, when you end her spin, either by letting go or also just by swapping characters, Piper will start a long finisher attack during which she's invulnerable. Not only can you use that invulnerability for convenient swaps, but you can also just use it evasively while running Piper on field, triggering the finisher to ignore enemy attacks. You have a lot of control over the timing, so it's easy to use that way. At M1, Piper can also build up power stacks with her non-EX special, though it's infrequent. Really, it's only useful for maintaining her current stack count. And speaking of power stacks, which are Piper's core ability, each gives her additional anomaly mastery, resulting in a total bonus of 120% mastery with the 30 stacks you can get at M1. Toss in the 40% additional mastery you can get from her signature weapon, and Piper is probably the only anomaly character that can consistently be blocked by the 3-second cooldown on re-triggering the same anomaly status. And let's not stop without highlighting that EX special attack. Her regular special is decent, but with energy, Piper can sustain her spin, growing stronger the longer you hold it and rapidly building power stacks. Free to move, and with a full stack of power, Piper covers a huge area, stacking anomaly incredibly fast. Against weak mobs, she will just tear through them, proccing assault after only like 3 hits, immediately killing them in non-challenge content. I don't think there's a single character that can solo wipe out a room of trash mobs faster than a full power Piper. Miyabi is probably pretty close, but she can only really do that with an occasional burst. Piper can sustain that power. It really is a testament to the dev's design that the best way to describe Piper's gameplay is rev her engine and just let her rip. Advice. 1. While using Piper's non-EX special isn't a waste, like most characters, do remember that special attacks do not generate energy. Going into a spin immediately after a dash attack, or the first hit of her combo, is both slow to charge and a loss in energy you'd gain from extending her combo. 2. Don't build bad habits. In early content, Piper's anti-interrupt and damage reduction on her spin mean you can basically just ignore enemy attacks, since the damage won't really put her in danger. That won't stay true forever. Piper's actually got a really solid dodge counter with a long and vulnerable window. You'll benefit from getting in the habit of dodge countering instead of just eating hits. 3. Since 1.4, I was unsure for a while of when to use Piper's ultimate, but recently I've realized that I can reliably use it for a double assault proc. Because of Piper's high mastery, if you use her ultimate immediately after you trigger assault, she'll either proc a second by the time her ultimate ends, or she'll be really close. 4. I don't run tests or build spreadsheets, but I still feel pretty confident in saying, don't run Anomaly Mastery on Piper's Dis 6. You can only proc Assault every 3 seconds, and Piper can get really close to that limit without adding even more Anomaly Mastery. Attack is probably a better choice. Though, fool that I am, I'm currently running Impact. See, I run Piper, Corin, and Lucy together, and so Piper ends up being the primary source of impact on that team. Now, Piper doesn't gain much impact since the gain is percent-based, and Piper has the lowest base impact value of any character. But I figure 24% more impact is still 24% faster stun when Piper's the primary source. And let's be honest, Piper's low impact is to keep her in check. She's got really good multipliers on her special, hence my pseudo-stun designation. If she had a higher base impact, she'd be competing with dedicated stunners. Anyway, I doubt it's meta, but it's been fine, so I haven't changed it since I tried it out. Caesar King. Wildcard. Keywords, support, bodyguard, and pseudo-stun. I skipped Caesar because of Ben, so I don't have her. Still, she made enough of an impact, also not intended, when she came out, that I'm at least aware of her high notes. First and foremost, that shield. Caesar creates a large shield that is shared across the entire team. While it's up, she gives the entire team plus 1000 attack, making her one of the better support characters in the game. The shield also gives you anti-interrupt, letting you play recklessly or poorly, depending on how you look at it, and completely absorbs the damage of the hit that breaks it. That second point is why you may have seen Caesar used in most of the early battle tower climbs. It's good to ignore attrition in the attrition mode. Add in the damage buff from her additional ability, and Caesar ends up being one of the best support characters currently in the game. And the requirement, has a defensive assist, applies to almost every character, so she'll have it on pretty much any team you can come up with. Finally, add in her higher than average impact, especially for a non-stun character, and she just gets even better. I can't talk too much about that aspect since I haven't played her much, but I imagine she builds up quite a bit of impact playing bodyguard. Caesar can also block attacks with her special, similar to Ben, though I think she leans more towards impact doing that, unlike Ben, who leads damage. I don't know if Caesar can go full on-field counter DPS like Ben can, but she's got the move for it. Advice. No advice for Caesar. I don't think we've actually gotten much time with her as a trial mode character, and even when she is, she functions a lot like a support, so I haven't played with her much. Caesar has a bit of a reputation as an easy mode character, which I honestly agree with. That said, ZZZ is not a competitive game, and so it doesn't really bother me that the characters aren't balanced. As long as the difficulty doesn't get so high that characters like Caesar become the only viable option, I actually kind of like that I can choose to fall back on strong, or dare I say overpowered characters to help me clear challenges. Burnice White. Wildcard. Keywords, anomaly DPS, and off-field DPS. Remember when I said I skipped Caesar because of Ben? Burnice is the reason. So let me set up Burnice by talking about that early time with Ben. I first tried out Ben back in the second half of 1.1, just out of curiosity. I immediately fell in love with his counter-style gameplay, but I didn't really have a third character to round out a full team, so I just ran a 2-character team pairing him with Lucy. I did decent with just the 2 of them, but to really shine, I needed a third character who could, 1. Deal more damage, especially in the stun window. 2. Be a reliable source of burn. The Inferno Metal disc set, plus 28% crit rate, is pretty good, doubly so for a character that isn't getting crit on their signature weapon. But counter DPS Ben mostly does physical damage. His only consistent fire buildup is limited to his dodge counter and his defensive assist, both actions that counter DPS Ben avoids using. And Lucy's attacks have decent buildup, but they are just as infrequent as Ben's. Someone else needs to bring the fire for Inferno Metal to work. And 3, finally, and easily the biggest limiting factor, this third character would need to be a support or have some kind of off-field mechanic, since Ben has to remain on-field to counter. That hypothetical character is Burnice. Caesar never stood a chance. Burnice's core mechanic, Afterburn, is pretty simple. Spend her energy to fill up her heat gauge. Once she has enough heat, either use EX Special or a charged basic attack to apply Scorched to the enemy, which appears as a little flame on top of them. Once Scorched, the enemy takes an extra burst of fire damage when they're hit, even if Burnice is off-field, consuming her heat gauge. And that really is all you need to know to play Burnice. Top off her heat with her flamethrower, swap her out, profit. She also triggers a quick assist during her ultimate, which is neat and appreciated. If only Seth had that. Advice. 1. Don't get in the habit of always rushing her double shot EX special. The slower single flamethrower attack has a dodge mechanic linked to it like Billy or Zhu Yuan's rolling shots, but the timing for it is even more generous. It's basically just a free dodge if you try and move while holding the attack. Not getting hit is better than being hit, so maybe get in the habit of pausing, checking out what the enemy is doing, and only switching to the faster double shot when you think it's safe. 2. And if you're curious about the previous hypothetical, where I mentioned a character needing damage, especially in the stun window, while Burnice doesn't have any explicit benefits from the stun window, bonus damage is bonus damage. What Burnice does have is a sustained EX special, so in that window, she's simultaneously benefiting from the boost to her active special damage, her afterburn damage, and her burn damage. In the team I run with an M6 Lucy, she's also triggering a steady rain of pigs at the same time. So it's a little team specific, but I think she still qualifies as good stun damage. Certainly better than Ben's. Lighter. Wildcard. Keywords: burst stun and support. Basic Lighter is pretty simple. Slowly over time, and also anytime a character on the team spends energy, Lighter will fill his morale gauge. At 80%, he will trigger a quick assist when you switch to him, and immediately launch the Aura move at the end of his basic attack combo, sustaining it until you let the attack button go, where he runs out of morale. During this morale burst, he's building up his support buffs. He's both debuffing Ice and Fire resist, and also buffing those elements' damage. Those effects both have a long duration, so they're easy to maintain. Also, the final hit of his morale burst applies a debuff to the enemy that extends the stun duration by 3 seconds. Outside of that, he's just a solid burst stun character. His EX special is quick, and if you've got energy to burn, can be changed into a second follow-up attack. What he mostly has is style. You can perform a looped version of his basic attack combo, never hitting the Aura part, by holding the button down and moving. And I really don't know if there's a point to that option, other than it's kind of cool. Doing this, you can easily switch targets too with the movement directions, which is also pretty cool and kind of fun when you're surrounded. Advice. 1. Still recommending you dodge. Lighter has an even higher 80% damage reduction during his morale burst, but it's still a good idea to dodge. This is mostly because you can trigger a third variation of his EX special attack during his burst dodge, which is both fast, and it won't reset the combo, immediately resuming his punch storm. This both looks and feels really badass. 2. Considering that Lighter builds his morale off of energy spent, one of the first teams I tried with him, knowing that it was a little silly, was Lucy, Soukaku, and Lighter. 2 supports and a stun agent. If you ever wanted to play almost exclusively with EX special attacks and the occasional morale burst, this might be the team for you. I doubt it's a meta team, but I'm getting it really close to being considered viable. Maybe give it a shot. I have found it to be a lot of fun to play. 3. Be careful if you switch to Lighter early, kind of commit to his morale burst. There is an internal cooldown on that quick assist, and so if you accidentally swap him in and then swap him out, he won't have the fast rush into his basic attack 5, when you come back to switch to him later. You'll have to build up to it to use his Morale Burst. Just something to know. Pulchra Fellini. Wildcard. Keywords, off-field damage and stun, and support. Our most recent A-rank character, the devs kindly gave her to us for free. Likely because they were introducing the new Aftershock mechanic with Soldier Zero Anby, and Anby needed a teammate with Aftershock for that to matter. I've been enjoying her. You run her a lot like a bodyguard, most often building her Aftershock stacks by using Pulchra to evasive assist. I didn't give her the bodyguard tag though, since she actually uses a second assist point when she does this. Evasive assists usually only use a single point. The biggest thing to know about Pulchra's mechanic is that she won't start using her Aftershock attacks until the on-field character uses a special attack. Note, that's any special attack, not just EX special. That's relevant because since we don't normally use normal special attacks, you need to actually go out of your way to trigger it so that Pulchra can start using her Aftershocks. And you'll want to go out of your way to do that pretty much immediately, because between her evasive assists, EX special, chain attack, and her ultimate, Pulchra will generate Aftershock stacks very frequently, so they will go to waste if you aren't immediately using them. Which is probably one of my favorite things about Pulchra's mechanic. It really mixes things up. She makes you constantly have to think about whether you should assist to refresh your stacks, or dodge because you still have stacks to burn. And that's on top of every time you gain stacks, immediately needing to rush out a special attack so that Pulchra can start consuming those stacks. I've been running her with Nekomata, and as I mentioned back in her section, Neko has some quirks about her special and quick assists. So if I rush too much, I end up whiffing the special, which means I don't proc Pulchra's Aftershock, and it's a big skill issue I've got to get better at. It's been fun. As an additional bonus, M6 Pulchra applies her additional ability bonus damage to all team attacks, not just Aftershock ones. And I bet that's a nice layer of support icing on an already pretty good cake. I currently have her at M4. Talking about the new Aftershock mechanic in general, I think it seems to be pretty strong. If you look at the multipliers on all the current Aftershock attacks, they're all pretty low. But much like Piper's base impact, I consider that to be a clue. That maybe they'd be too strong if they weren't that low. Advice. I already covered it, but I'll repeat it one more time. Once Pulchra gains her Aftershock stacks, you always need to hit with a special attack before she'll start using them. You want to trigger that as soon as possible after quick assisting from her, so that she can spend them before she gains more. Calydon Trivia. Trivia number 1. I've been pretty happy with all of the ZZZ characters so far, including their non-combat design. Not only are they all silly in some way, but they also all seem to have very fleshed out, often tragic, backstories. And the devs do a good job at only giving us a taste, or a hint of those stories, so we're never swamped in pathos. The result is that it feels like each character has multiple pages of backstory or depth, just waiting to slowly be revealed someday. And I point that out here, only so I can declare how much I love that Burnice doesn't seem to have any of that. Burnice, the brain rot queen, loves to pound energy drinks, light fires, and dance the night away. And as far as I know, that's pretty much it. She's simple and crazy in the best way. And I hope we never learn anything about her past. Trivia 2. I clearly love Piper's gameplay, but her design annoys me. Now I've watched anime long enough that I've had to come to terms with the whole lolly baba trope. But the devs have walked that line so tight with Piper that it just frustrates the hell out of me. Let me be clear, I'm not trying to justify any uncomfortable waifu tastes. Piper has a wicked case of baby face. No judge is ever going to let that slide. It's just that, considering most of ZZZ's roster is actually adults, with most characters seeming to be in their 20s, and how nothing I know about Piper seems to indicate that she's some kind of child prodigy. I mean, petite adults do exist. With the usual lolly baba trope, it's clear. It's a little gross, but it's unambiguous. But with Piper, I just want to pick her up, shake her, and scream, "How old are you?" Trivia number 3. Lighter had a taunt ability in the Tekken Force event that came out when his banners was released back in 1.3. If there's any justice in the world, we'll see it come back as part of his combat kit during 2.0 with whatever the devs have planned for the Season 1 characters. If anyone deserves the rule of cool, it's Lighter. Hollow Special Operations, Section 6. Soukaku. Support. Keywords: support, bodyguard, DPS? Basic Soukaku is simple. Use her relatively cheap EX special to build up her vortex charges. At 3 charges, hold down her special attack to fly the flag, which will trigger a quick assist. The character that swaps in will get her 1000 attack buff. You can also do this without 3 charges, but the buff will only be 500 attack. If you run her like that, she will absolutely work with little fuss, even if her setup time is a little slow. The duration of the buff is long, so it's not really that big a deal. Where things start to get complicated is when you want to start using Soukaku outside of being a dedicated support. First, let's talk about that buff. You can share that buff with the entire team, not just a single character, by using her chain attack. Soukaku will fly the banner as part of her chain attack, and she also gets a vortex charge when using it. So as long as she has 2 charges before the chain attack, whoever you switch to after Soukaku's chain attack will gain her maxed buff. Relative to slots, we're talking about using that on your Wildcard character, since running in the support slot, Soukaku would normally quick assist to the on-field character. And that's pretty manageable. You're trying to balance 2 separate buff timers, but Soukaku doesn't really struggle to build the 5 charges she needs to maintain 2 characters. And that doesn't include the full charge she can always pass to her quick assist partner with her ultimate. The next step on maximizing Soukaku is that she also has several damage buffs. When she uses a maxed out Fly the Flag, she also gains enhanced basic attacks, which have really good multipliers. In addition, her M6 and her signature weapon both buff her damage further. She's also in the same boat as Lucy, in that you can maximize her support buff while building her as a dedicated DPS character, attack and crit. So the third step to maximizing Soukaku is to proc her buff without immediately swapping to your on-field character, so you can benefit from it for her burst of enhanced Frosted Banner attacks. She'll still have those enhanced basic attacks if you quick assist, but you'll be giving up the big buff, meaning they'll do a lot less damage. Now, how you manage all of that at the same time, or even just across the stun window, I don't have a clue yet. But it's there for you to work on if you want to run Soukaku. Altogether, Soukaku is probably the most flexible character in the game, with regard to slot position. You can very comfortably run her as a bodyguard with a buff in the wildcard slot, or in the case of the silly team I mentioned with Lighter, maybe even run her on field. Oh, and I mentioned freeze in her strengths just because, from experience, it seems like Soukaku's EX special has a huge anomaly buildup multiplier. The devs don't actually show us this value, so I don't know for sure, but you will frequently trigger freeze running Soukaku. I wouldn't lean into it running anomaly proficiency, since freeze is the weakest damage of all the anomaly elements, but maybe just consider it yet another support bonus of hers. Freeze is both a flinch, and it applies a crit damage buff for the 10 seconds that it lasts. Advice. 1. Soukaku's buff only passes with a quick assist or a chain attack. If you keep Soukaku on field to use it for her Frosted Banner attacks, you'll need to hold down special to Fly the Flag again and proc another quick assist, in order to pass it on after her attacks, though no energy is needed to do this. Don't worry about the time ticked on the buff, since Soukaku's buff is refreshed when she passes it. 2. Not really a bug, but something I think is annoying. Soukaku's ultimate doesn't proc Fly the Flag until the end, so her ultimate attack doesn't actually benefit from the buff she generates with it. Consider that yet another thing you need to factor in when maximizing her output. Tsukashiro Yanagi. Versatile. Keywords: Anomaly DPS. Another character I don't have and only know from trial mode. The only thing I really know about her kit is that you want to learn the differences in attacks between her stances, so you can keep track of where you are and when you should switch. Her special also has a parry, but I think there's some delay or timing to it. It's definitely not as easy to pull off as it is for Caesar or Ben. The real core of her kit is that her EX special triggers mini disorders, while also buffing disorder damage. I imagine you almost always want to run her with some other anomaly character for a dedicated disorder team. You'll do a lot of damage with pretty much whoever you want, except for another electric anomaly character like Grace. Advice. No advice. That's really all I know about her. As far as I know, no other character gets more value out of disorder than her, so I suppose the only real question with Yanagi is, who do you want to pair her with? Asaba Harumasa. Versatile. Keywords: burst DPS. Basic Harumasa, very basic, is a pretty simple burst DPS. he will generate little electric orbs on the battlefield called electro quivers. Once they're on the field, when you charge either his basic attack or his special attack, all of the orbs will fire off at the same target, building up electro prison stacks, which appear as a big blue X on the enemy. If you then dash attack at that enemy, Harumasa will start a chain of enhanced dash attacks, which you can continue repeating until you use all of the electro prison stacks. Those enhanced dash attacks are where Harumasa's burst damage comes from, having both a higher crit rate as well as bonus crit damage from those attacks. The hard part, and why I have him slotted as versatile instead of just Wildcard, is that Harumasa and his team can generate a lot of electro quivers. If you run him Wildcard and only pull him out for the burst DPS in the stun window, you're leaving a lot of damage on the table. I, admittedly, run him like that, mostly relying on the stun window, but that's just where his damage starts getting good. It can be improved a whole lot more. But you'll need to put in some effort and focus to min-max every charge. Effectively using every charge without wasting any stacks by overcapping is an art. Advice. My best advice for Harumasa, if you really want to output his best damage, is to go look for a professional. I'm not the one to ask for that information. But maybe do look it up if you're interested. I'm managing to use him to 3-star Deadly Assault, and I'm not playing him incredibly well. So let that clue you into just how strong he can be. Hoshimi Miyabi. Versatile. Keywords: Anomaly DPS and Burst DPS. Miyabi has the title of Void Hunter, an in-game title given to the strongest Hollow investigators. The devs did not disappoint when designing Miyabi's gameplay to live up to that title. She is hilariously powerful. I'm not going to bother explaining every little thing. She's the strongest character, she's the fastest character, she has her own custom element. She even has a parry just baked into the end of her basic attack combo. Her core mechanic, other than her custom element, is her Fallen Frost charges. All you really need to know is that you want all 6. You can do 2 weaker charge attacks for 2 and 4 charges respectively, but you really should just save up for the full 6. At 6 charges, Miyabi's fully charged basic attack unleashes an arena-wide series of screen-clearing slashes that can do more damage than her ultimate. There's a reason she gets all the Virgil memes. Run her with a support and another anomaly character, and she'll be able to use that super attack pretty much as frequently as you can trigger Disorder. So hell, maybe don't run her with a support. Maybe ignore her additional ability just to make the fight slightly more sporting. The only other thing I'll add is just to say how much I like her design. Not only is she overpowered and badass, but she's also not a greedy character like Billy or Jane. Miyabi's mechanics are designed so that she wants to tag in her teammates to maximize her damage. I just think that's a really nice touch for such a strong character. She simultaneously steals and shares the spotlight. Advice. The best advice I can give for Miyabi is to stay aware of her anomaly buildup on the enemy. You don't want to waste buildup by using an EX special or an ultimate when she's already close to proccing Frost. To a lesser extent, that also applies to her Frost charges, but really the only big way to waste Frost charges would be with her ultimate, which gives you 3 charges. In that same vein, there is a general rule for any anomaly character. If a character does not have an off-field anomaly mechanic, which is pretty much only Burnice for now, they will not trigger an anomaly status if they're not actively on field. If you hit EX special with a character and then immediately swap, the attack will continue building anomaly up to 100%, but not actually trigger the status. Make sure you actually trigger the status before you swap out when you're close. I mention this with Miyabi because you should definitely swap characters while she's doing her massive supercharged attack. But if you were close to proccing Frost and expect that super attack to trigger it, you are going to be disappointed if you switch characters. Stars of Lyra. Astra Yao. Support. Keywords: support. Yeah, there's not much to say about Astra. She's an incredible support, worth using on pretty much any team. But under normal conditions, she doesn't actually do much actively during combat. Here's how to play Astra. Press special attack to enter her singing state. Swap to another character. Maybe, during a chain attack, use her last, so you can trigger her ultimate conveniently. That's it. Astra's buff triggers or refreshes anytime you quick assist to a character, and she has at least 25 energy. While she's singing in the background, anytime your on-field character does a heavy attack, they'll trigger a quick assist to the other non-Astra team member. If, for some reason, you want to run 2 on-field characters at the same time, Astra's a really good way to do that. Really, she just makes it easier to run any pair of characters, maintaining a powerful buff on them at the same time. As to why one of her strengths is chain attacks, after using Astra's ultimate, the next 2 quick assists will make that character enter using their chain attack instead of their normal assist follow-up, which is also pretty great. Advice. 1. Not even a joke, probably the hardest thing to do with an Astra team is quickly swap back to Astra. If you're attacking, you're pretty much always triggering a quick assist, and the target is never Astra. You either need to stop attacking, or she needs to be out of energy. It's not a big deal if you remember to end a chain attack with Astra, but I often rush my chain attack order and don't do that. So trying to switch back to Astra so I can use her ultimate can be a comedy of errors. 2. There's no meta or long-term reason to do this, but Astra does have a full moveset and you can spend her energy herself. If you're bored of never actually playing Astra, maybe take her solo into the Withering Garden and actually learn her moveset. I had fun doing that. I've actually had fun doing that for multiple characters. It's a good way to learn all of their quirks. The only character I've given up on to date while trying to do that was Pulchra. Pulchra cannot use her Aftershock stacks at all by herself. So I aborted that run because it just wasn't much fun. Evelyn Chevalier. Wildcard. Keywords, burst DPS. I wasn't actually sold on Evelyn from her gameplay demos prior to the release of 1.5. I thought she looked kind of repetitive. But man, playing her, I think her mechanics feel fluid and fantastic. The first thing you want to do with Evelyn is start with a special attack. This activates her binding seal, which is the thread that links her to the enemy she hits. Not only does this enable the crit rate bonus from her core skill, but it's also mandatory if you want to be able to dodge using her special attack. And you want to do that. Not only does it feel slick as hell, but you'll also fill up her gauge, her burning embers, faster when you dodge this way. Evelyn's gauge has a halfway point, and once she has more than 50% charge, she can trigger a powerful attack by charging a basic attack or a special attack. These charge attacks build up burning tether points, and once Evelyn has 3 points, her next charge attack will consume all 3 points and trigger her chain attack, which is just great damage. The other notable thing Evelyn does is that after using her ultimate for the first time, she casts off her jacket. Not only is this stylish as hell, but after that first ultimate, Evelyn will always hold 1 point, meaning that from then on you only need to gain 2 charges to be able to trigger a chain attack. Now, because she can charge faster by dodging with special attacks, you could call Evelyn a bit of an on-field agent, but you really only want to do that to build up points. It takes a fair amount of time to max out both her gauge and her charges, so you really want to save everything for the stun window. That's why I'm not calling Evelyn a versatile agent. She likes a little bit of field time, but she still wants to save everything for the stun window. Advice. As mentioned, Evelyn can dodge using her special attack. The timing for this is pretty generous, so if you're having trouble doing it successfully, remember that she can only do it while Binding Seal is active. A lot of actions will break Binding Seal and you may not always notice it. So know that losing Binding Seal could be the reason why you fail to dodge if it does happen. In that vein, it's a good habit to start with a special attack anytime you switch to Evelyn or after killing an enemy. Not only does this mean you won't forget, but the attack is also an effective gap closer if the next enemy is far away. This also means that Evelyn is in the growing pool of characters that actually want to use their non-EX special attack. Obol Squad. Soldier 11. Versatile. Keywords, on-field DPS. Another character I don't have. My understanding of her is that she's just a solid, no-fluff damage dealer. Her mechanic is that her basic attack combo has its own timing or rhythm. If you miss that timing, she'll do a weaker physical attack, but if you nail it, she'll do a stronger fire attack. That's pretty much it as far as I know. No meters, no gauges, no points. She's capable of running at full speed pretty much all of the time. Her EX special, chain attack, and ultimate all give her a window where you are guaranteed to trigger the stronger fire attacks for like 8 hits, but if you can already nail the timing, that probably doesn't matter that much. I've got her slotted as versatile since she does have a damage bonus in the stun window, so I guess you could run her as a burst DPS, but that bonus isn't exactly integral to her kit. It's just bonus damage. Advice? I have no advice. Run her if you like her. Soldier Zero Anby. On-field. Keywords, on-field DPS, and support. Soldier Zero Anby is the last current character that I don't have. Still, with the time trial we got, I don't think she's terribly complex. Her attacks build up a gauge on enemies, and the gauge reflects the max of 3 silver star marks that she can build up. Anytime Anby uses a special attack on an enemy that has at least 1 mark, she'll trigger a stronger attack that dashes through the enemy and counts as an aftershock effect, which means it's made stronger by her own buffs. If you use 3 in a row, consuming 3 marks, she'll trigger a free additional lightning bolt attack from the sky, meaning that you pretty much only want to use marks once they're at their max of 3, so you can always get this free extra hit, which is also treated as an aftershock attack. The last thing to know is that you use her EX special by holding the button down, since any single click will always use her normal dash special attack. That EX special attack throws her swords in a big AoE circle and adds 3 marks to any enemy's hit. Needless to say, you only want to use that attack when the enemy has no marks, so that you can get the full value. So Soldier Zero Anby has a bit of build-up time, but can put out a lot of damage in a short period by chaining 3+1 Aftershock dashes into an EX special into 3+1 more Aftershock dashes. Advice. Again, no advice. I assume she's pretty good on teams with Aftershock attacks. If you're currently playing, you already have Pulchra, so kudos to you if you also pull Trigger. I suspect that team will do quite a bit of damage on top of having a pretty short time to stun. There's a bit of veteran gacha player doomsaying about whether Aftershock could be an abandoned mechanic, so Anby won't be worth using in the long run, but I'm less pessimistic. I haven't been burned before. I've been pretty thrilled with the devs so far, and from the 2.0 dev talk, it sounds like they want to introduce more Aftershock-like gameplay, so I'm fairly confident we'll see Aftershock appear again soon during Season 2 updates. So while Soldier Zero Anby doesn't currently have a lot of strong team options, she probably will eventually. Trigger. Wildcard. Keywords, off-field damage and stun, and support. Trigger is just a hair more complex than Astra, but not much. Hold down basic attack to fill up her purge gauge, which only takes 4 shots. After that, she'll trigger a follow-up attack, followed by a reverse quick assist. Once off-field, Trigger will fire off an aftershock attack along with the team's attacks, limited to once every 3 seconds. She'll also trigger a separate aftershock attack after any EX special, assist follow-up, or ultimate. These consume her purge gauge, but very slowly. You will only need to refill Trigger's gauge during the longest fights. The only other mechanic she has is that her EX special and her ultimate both give her a brief window where there's no cooldown on her aftershock attacks, and they don't consume her gauge. This means she can spam out a lot of attacks in a short window, as long as the rest of the team keeps on attacking. Trigger's core skill is that her aftershock attacks all increase the damage the enemy takes, which is effectively 100% of the time. Technically it increases stun damage, just also outside stun. That's really only relevant to the damage calculation and spreadsheet nerds. It has to do with how multipliers stack. Considering it a team-wide damage buff is good enough. And that's pretty much it. Just an all-around solid, off-field damage stun support agent. I just pulled her and have started running her Wildcard to Zhu Yuan, using her as a bodyguard. She doesn't have the heavy assist, but she's still a stun agent, so it seems to be working fine. Advice. I haven't even had her for a week yet, so no real advice. Using my whole slot-based team building idea, I guess Trigger actually runs support in the meta team of Soldier Zero, Pulchra, and Trigger. You definitely want Pulchra in the Wildcard slot there, since Pulchra benefits more from hitting assists. I only mention that to show that Trigger is pretty flexible. Obol Trivia. The fan service power creep continues, with Trigger taking the new top slot. She probably has the most over-the-top ridiculous design to date, and I'm not talking about all the jiggle in her pants. That said, I personally give Trigger a pass. And the reason for that is that, like a large part of the community, I also think that Trigger looks a lot like a Nikke character. In my headcanon, that is not an accident. I believe it is absolutely the truth. I believe that Trigger was intentionally designed as an homage to Nikke, and in that case, instead of being way too much, I find her design hilarious. I mean, she's got the look, she's got the jiggle, and the devs even made her a custom shooting gallery event. Surely that all wasn't an accident. So shout out to the devs for having fun, and also for giving her a much better firing stance than the traditional Nikke butt-out squat. Finally, just because it's only like a week away, and I've seen their mechanics from the 1.7 special program, let's briefly speculate about the 2 pending characters for Mockingbird, Vivian and Hugo. Vivian. Wildcard. Keywords, anomaly DPS, off-field DPS. It seems like Vivian will have an off-field mechanic like Burnice, so I'm expecting her to be just as good. No clue how exactly they'll differ gameplay-wise. With any luck, the two of them will turn out to be a ridiculous combo. They're competing off-field anomalies and disorders running out of control, while you screw around with some other character on-field. Hugo, Wildcard. Keywords, burst DPS. I'm expecting Hugo to be ridiculous, maybe putting up the single largest damage number to date. From what I can tell, Hugo's core mechanic is that his EX special attack consumes the entire stun window, cancelling it, and turning it into a massive damage bonus for a single hit. So not only will Hugo likely do some thumbnail-worthy damage, but it seems he also wants to be run with stun-heavy teams, since rushing the next stun window just means another massive damage drop. The devs demoed him with Lycaon and Lighter, and yeah, that might just end up being his best team. I'm expecting Hugo to be the Koleda of damage. Just tag him in, boom, and then swap back to the stunners. So once again, here's the complete table of all the characters in their slots. I like this separation, since the alternative, where you just break the characters down into damage, stun, and support, or maybe just compare them by their classes, doing that, I think you will fail to find each character's true strengths. If all you care about is running one DPS character, you may shun Corin or Anton, who can't compete with other on-field characters. But neither of them ever need to be an on-field character to excel. If you get hung up on defense, you'll never find out that Ben can do damage, or that Seth is pretty great even outside anomaly teams. If all you ever use Soukaku for is to buff your on-field character, you're barely getting a taste of her true potential. Hugo is a new pending ice attack character, the same as Ellen, but he's hardly a replacement for her. He's not even out yet, and I'm already very confident about saying that, unless you only care about what's best. Taking a less limited approach to team building will only expand the fun you can have across ZZZ's gameplay. So with any luck, I've ended up inspiring someone to give their less meta characters a chance to shine, or to try out a new unconventional team. The roster, and therefore the possibilities, is only going to grow from here. This makes up pretty much everything I wanted to get off my chest with regards to ZZZ, so I'm not planning on making any more videos, unless an audience magically appears and asks for it. So since I'm not currently planning another video, here's a few more oddball thoughts to get off my chest before I fade back to the ether for which I came. My first thought when I saw Zhu Fufu was kinda meh. I like the fact that most ZZZ characters are adults, and even the few younger characters we have are older teenagers, so I wasn't thrilled at getting a child character. But my second thought about Zhu Fufu was,
let them fight.
Kung Fu Tiger versus Ninja Alley Cat! Surely the devs have seen the potential in that, and there will be an animation that will have us rolling in laughter when 2.0 comes out. Fingers crossed. Speaking of potential and hilarious team-ups, Evelyn is, or was, a spy, with a long history of fake identities. Jane is an undercover contractor for the police, constantly assuming fake identities to infiltrate gangs. What would happen if those two agents had to work together? I imagine that it would be hilarious. On top of professional rivalry, them both being actresses for lack of a better word, Evelyn is barely containing a huge crush on Astra, and Jane is a walking, talking HR violation. In my mind, Jane could, and would, make Evelyn very uncomfortable, just to win some perceived competition between them. I really want to see the two of them pair up for some mission or investigation. Hopefully, the devs think so too. Lastly, I just want to comment on people excited for the Angels of Delusion and disappointed that they didn't appear in the 2.0 teaser. What I believe is that they didn't appear in the teaser because they won't appear in Wi-Fi Peninsula, which the teaser was focused on. This is just me speculating, so it's not based on leaks or anything, but I currently think that the Angels of Delusion might show up under the Stars of Lyra faction. I know they have their own team thing going on, including a Bangbu, but here's why I think it all the same. Slight spoilers for the 1.5 story. The major story thread for 1.5 was artists wanting creative freedom from their corporate overlords. Not only does the story pretty solidly land on the artist side of that argument by the end, but at the end we're also told that Astra wants to break free from her label, and that she plans to start her own label, likely focusing on creative freedom, but she doesn't have enough money to do that yet. I suspect that said label will end up being called the Stars of Lyra. And if Stars of Lyra becomes a label, then they need someone to represent. Someone like a new growing idol group. A group like the Angels of Delusion, maybe? Also, I can't remember if it was a trust event or a quality time, but Evelyn comments near the 404 Music Club on 6th Street that it might be a good place to buy for her and Astra's plans. So that's why I don't think we saw the Angels in the 2.0 teaser. It's because they'll appear as an intermission story, 2.1, 2.3, whenever, which will take place back on 6th Street instead of the Waifei Peninsula.